Welcome back to the Rebuild the Construction Mindset podcast. This year, we're diving into education with our new series, Rebuild and Relearn, bringing you insights from the front lines of construction and beyond. From trade professionals to students and educators, we're uncovering what truly makes the industry tick.
If you're enjoying the podcast, watching it on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn, and wherever you listen to your podcast. Your support really helps us keep building and sharing these important stories. Share it with your friends, colleagues, anyone else curious about the construction industry and how we can make it better. Together, we can grow this amazing community. Thanks for listening, and let's jump into today's episode.
And thanks for having me. My name is Manja Horner, and I'm the founder and CEO of Boostld. We are a company that works with only trades organizations, so skilled trades, because we're here on a mission to increase the competency of tradespeople through training, and we're here to help the company owners grow with really great HR practices, training, and strategies to help retain and find and hold on to the best people. So it's a wonderful mission. We have an amazing team. And I'm really excited to talk to you today because I love to talk about anything training related, anything related to modernizing the employee's experience, and specifically around the trades. So it's a little bit of a story about how I got involved with this, but I'm excited to dig in with you.
I think we wanted to start by talking about the labor shortage in the industry, and I guess with your experience and with your knowledge of what your thoughts are around that and how we can kind of work around it as an industry.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different communication and messaging out there around the labor crisis and labor shortage. And it depends on where you live, you'll get different stories. Some areas in Canada are booming and there's definitely a shortage. And then there's some areas where we're actually seeing a surplus of workers, which is really interesting. There's some different situations around the US as well. So it really depends on the market you're in locally. But I would say, yes, overall, there is a shortage, but it's not in the way that you think completely. It's not necessarily just warm bodies, so to speak. Like that's not what the industry is looking for. And that's where the shortage is. It's actually we're lacking on skilled people. So there are a lot of people that are going to be retiring, right? It's like 1 in 3 tradespeople will be retiring within the next 5 years or 6 years. That time keeps shrinking as we're marching towards 2030. So that's a lot of people leaving. That means a ton of really skilled people who are hard workers and have this track record. They're leaving. There's a lot of other people that are sort of at the early stage of the spectrum that want to get into trades, that are getting into trades. So that's great. That's good news. But there's this issue with the gap in the middle. There's this issue with they've been around 5, 8, 10 years, and they're kind of in that middle where they don't require as much of the training and handholding. That's where the skilled trade shortage actually is. So we will see things progress and improve over time because we're seeing now in a lot of political spaces, there's money going into skilled trades development. There's certainly some cultural shifts to encourage people more into the trade. So we're going to start to see a little bit of a swing there, but that's not making up for this gap. So the most critical thing right now is figuring out how to get people skilled faster. And that's the tricky spot.
Yeah, I was going to say that's something that I experience. I mean, I'm in the trades. I'm a project manager in the trades. And I've noticed with even my own carpenters, we have like a select few. I wouldn't say a select few. We have actually quite a few really skilled carpenters. And then we have people coming in that can't even read like a tape measure yet and that are like wanting to learn that and get into it. But I think it's not only like the knowledge gap, right? It's the fact that, yeah, some of the people are retiring. They might not really have the energy or really the want to be training and to be bringing these people up and getting them, I guess, as trained as they need to be for that skill. But also I feel like a lot of it is they're so busy with just getting the work done that they kind of give them, and I'm not saying this is necessarily my company, but I feel like just in general, they're giving them like the easier tasks, or they don't really want to train them because they're like, oh, we have to actually get this job done. We have a deadline, right? Like they're trying to meet a schedule. So what is your opinion on how those people can still be able to like train and focus on that while also still meeting the schedule and meeting those deadlines?
Yeah, this is a tough question because when you start to ask people to be doing 100% productivity of the actual doing, and then you want them to try to help train on the side, that is going to be an issue, right? So there's a couple of things I think we have to do. We have to recognize that a person has, a certain amount of capacity, 100% of their working time. And if it's really important that we get them training some more people, we need to find a way to carve out a portion of their time and compensate them perhaps differently, or give them some of that headspace and time to actually train. But you're right. It's not like everybody, just because they're great at their craft, doesn't mean that they're great at training. So there's some other things that we can do, a few strategies that we can think of. One is, and I don't know if you guys do this, but the idea of a camcorder method. So actually recording people's work. Hear me out. Okay, this is a little easier with knowledge workers because they're on a computer. And so you can actually record your screen, and you can use technology to do a lot of the capturing for you. What we don't want people doing is okay, now I'm going to show you how to do this thing. And they're recording and it's really awkward. But think about this with me. Take the idea of capturing your work while you're doing it. Okay, so whether that be a GoPro or a camera on a tripod right beside them. So let's say your carpenters are trimming something and it's a really interesting mitered angle, or it's kind of like a weird return on a baseboard or something, or they're trimming stairs and you want to be able to capture somebody who's really good at the work. What if you had the apprentice or the junior filming the senior, capturing their work by video, asking them some smart questions? You could even have some of those questions posed ahead of time and actually getting it on camera. Now, what you can do now, how you can leverage technology is once that footage is captured, you could start to use some of our AI tools. You could build out transcripts. You could build out a playbook for a team leader. You could build out SOPs or checklists or cutting lists. You could start to use technology to actually dissect what was just done. And you can start to create your own internal training library on here's how we do this. So this is something to consider. We have to find ways of actually getting the information from a really experienced person in an organic way that doesn't feel onerous and weird and annoying, and capture it somehow. And this is one way.
I love that because I think it creates, because we do that in the office, right? We have all those training tools. We have, programs or something that they can read off of. And you're right, we don't have that in the field. That's not something that our new employees can use and utilize. So how can we, as I guess in the office side, assist our field in doing that? Is there some ways that we can kind of bridge that gap so it's not fully on the field doing the training?
Yeah, good question. I think what we can do in the office as HR, or operations people is we can think about this idea of pathways. Now, this is obviously very simple for me because this is my whole world. Training and development is my whole world. So to me, it's a no-brainer. But if you think about, it's all reverse engineering and training. So I may be going too far down a rabbit hole, but you have to look at what are the things somebody needs to be able to know, what are the skills they need to be able to have, how do they need to think, etc. And then you start to reverse engineer the training path. But simply, I think starting to work with tradespeople and interview and ask some questions okay, what are some of the most important things you do on a job? And even looking at your project management process, that could be a good way to start. You look at your project management and go, okay, we need them to be able to frame and then insulate and then do this and then do that and then drywall and blah, blah, blah. So you've already got the scope of work. Now it might be up to you and some of the tradespeople to break down what are the skills to actually do the job. And then you can start to build out the videos a little bit, to complete that. So that's one idea just from a high level strategy. By the way, that's what we do. We do strategy as part of our services. But that the other thing is you could just make a really convenient way for their videos to get uploaded, and then you guys can turn them into training content. I wouldn't be expecting any field person to do anything with a video beyond capturing it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I think if you can figure out a really easy handoff process or workflow and, kind of make it happen that way. The other thing you could consider is investing in a good tool for the office. So we have one standard, kind of like a learning management system, but it's more than that we recommend and partner with. It's called Modsy. If you're interested in that, let me know more. It's one of the first of its kind software. It's fantastic. It's knowledge management. It's like learning management system, employee resources all in one. It's great for the trades. So if you have something like that set up, it's a place now where everybody can come and access the information for their role. So I think it's just setting up some of the tech structure, having an idea of the strategy, and then making the processes smooth. So you're capturing their video, capturing the how-tos, and you're converting it into a course or something that's actually really meaningful and useful.
And have you seen, I think one of the things that I know that a lot of people have issues with in terms of training is that they don't have like a budget per se on their project for the training portion, right? Of training this individual. So it's just kind of like we quote unquote lose money on training because we're having to catch them up. And all of like the budget's based off of skilled labor. So it's based off of being able to install the thing by a certain amount of hours or minutes or whatever. How do you see people that you've worked with budgeting that training portion?
I don't feel super comfortable answering this, but I would just say there needs to be a buffer. So maybe it's a 20% or 25% buffer for at least a little while until you can get a crew that's where it needs to be. So I would be buffering that into my pricing. I mean, even in projects outside of trades, there's an expectation that a person is going to need training ongoing. So I know even myself within my team, I'll just give you an example of what I do. We are a learning culture. So investing in learning for our team is actually right in our company values. There's an expectation that everybody is spending time in their week learning something new or working on upgrading a skill. So I think you have to, and I price that in. You know, we have coaching time from leadership. That's part of their training. It can't all be just producing some sort of an output. There has to be some breathing room in that budget. So I would say we've got to get better at it normalizing a margin for training.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to say it.
I agree with that 100%. I mean, I think even as a whole, in terms of, you know, the product as a whole, I feel like we need to put a consideration that because of this influx of new workers, even as like from the owners group or from the general contractor, they need to understand that a lot of the trades are having a lot of training going on their projects, and that they need to kind of give them some grace and maybe even like build it into a schedule, which I don't think will ever happen. But, you know, those kind of things or those kind of conversations I think need to be happening, especially with the influx of people coming in. So I know you said earlier there was a pretty big gap between the people retiring versus the people coming into the industry. What are some things that we can do to help the people that are retiring understand that, you know, they need to be training the people, and also, and vice versa, the people that are coming in can also help people that are retiring more with like technology and that kind of stuff? How do you see that gap decreasing?
Yeah, good. It's a good question. And this is going to come down to your individual company culture. This is a culture thing. If leadership believes in something and they communicate it regularly and it's reinforced and key behaviors are incentivized, you're going to get the behaviors that you want. And it's interesting. A lot of times I talk to people and they say, oh, culture, like we don't really intentionally have that, or company culture, but whatever. No, I've talked to the biggest culture experts in the industry, and I'm talking like big companies, and you will have a culture. Every company has a culture, whether you like it or not. So you can choose to be intentional about that or let it just happen. And that's when you can end up with a culture that doesn't reward or encourage this kind of shared learning or network or any of that, right? Because you could be actually dissuading people just in the approach, the language, you know, that's very important. So I would say it comes down to your individual company culture. Only you as an owner can decide that we're going to be spending 15% of our week on training. We're going to be focused on capturing key information from our senior people and loving them for that and rewarding them for that. Maybe you throw, you know, gift cards some people's way when they've spent some amazing time in the week nurturing somebody junior. You know, like a $50, $75 gift card to a great restaurant? Really? Like, hello, that goes a long way. And how quickly is everyone else going to pick up on when we do that? We're actually incentivized for that. So I would say you need to think about what kind of culture do you want to set? You set the tone for it, you communicate it, and you reward the behaviors you want to see. It's simple as that.
Yeah, it is very
And
simple.
if you get resistance, like, okay, fine, but like, don't have that person do the training if they're resisting it. Do you want them sharing bad, toxic practices? Maybe not.
Right.
Reward your great people and encourage them.
I love that. What is some stuff that Boostld does to help, like if a company was looking for some additional support, what are some things that you guys offer?
Yeah, well, it's a great question. We have a range of services from the HR side. So that's, recruiting, kind of org chart, org design, setting it up so the right people are reporting to the right people and what are the job descriptions. All of that is kind of the HR side. So that's where things start. It's hard to build training when there's no job description because you don't really know what you're training towards. So we kind of do hand in hand. We have HR people and training people on our team for that reason. But the thing that would really appeal, I think, to the listening audience right now is we build out the full learning ecosystem. So the learning ecosystem is made up of your strategy, it's made up of your people, your technology, your course content, and everything's all working together in the learning culture. There's 5 pieces. You can see that right on our website. Actually, we've got a diagram there, boostld.com, if anybody wants to check that out. So when we're working with a client, we're working on what are the biggest issues right now that you need to solve. Let's not solve problems that you don't have. Let's look at what are the problems immediately and solve for those. It could be supervisor support and training. It could be, getting a technology system organized so that there's a place to hold the training. It could be starting with onboarding training and that experience. There's a lot of different things that we do, but all of it is to take a growing company and help them scale and help them with the people side of scaling, because there's a lot of money lost in employee turnover. And right now, especially because it's so important to hire the right people, you want them to stay once they're with you. And that onboarding experience is really critical for whether people stay or not. In fact, here's a scary fact. Think about this, people. If you have a staff who leaves, that can cost you about 50% to sometimes 200% of their salary. So if you've got like a $50,000 a year employee and you've got, let's say, 3 of them, that's 150,000. That could cost you 75 to 400,000 if they leave. Like, it's really costly. That's like the cost to find, recruit, train, your time, the manager's time. It's very expensive. And 69% of people will stay with you if your onboarding is great. But like 30% of people will leave if the experience is not good. So this is the onboarding experience. So this is your first day, week, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. So getting that right is crucial. And I can talk for a whole hour just on this.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great point. I mean, you're not, the people that are onboarded on a project or for a job, that 60 days, they're like, I don't care if I leave. Like, I'm not going to burn any bridges because I've only worked for this company for 60 days. And yeah, that's a very, very crucial time. Because I think there's a lot of misinterpretation on the 60-day window and the 30, 60 to 90-day reviews. It's not just for the employees. It's the employees also like reviewing and interviewing the company and like bringing, their 2 cents. And I think people just think it's just one-sided, and it's not. So that's a great point.
That's right. And think about that first day of your job. If you are leaving your loved ones at home and they know you're going to the first day at this new job, and you get home and you're telling your mom or your girlfriend or your partner or spouse or whoever, they're saying, "Hey babe, how was your first day?" And you're like, "It was crap. Like, it was awkward, or I didn't really know where I was supposed to be, or I wasn't really sure who I was supposed to follow." Like, there's just some uncertainty, or you feel like you're in the way. Like, there's a lot of awkwardness in that first day and even first week. You want that experience to actually be great. And we've got actually, I should share this with you if you want to offer it in your show notes.
Yeah.
I do have an onboarding checklist. It's a multi-page blueprint, which has literally bullet pointed day 1, day 2 to 5, ongoing recommendations, even like the pre-boarding stuff. I've got some checklists there and some facts. So you could share it with your audience if they'd like to download it.
Yeah, great.
But get that right and be intentional and leverage your people in the office to help set that up so you can track it and make sure it's a great experience for new hires.
Yeah, that's great. No, that'd be great. What do you usually see as like the biggest thing why people leave during that first like 60 days? Is it culture, or is it lack of like job description? Is it lack of the training typically? Like, is it because they don't really know what they're doing, or they really just flat out don't like the job?
And it could be a number of things. So it could be the culture. Maybe the culture is not that welcoming, or it's not that exciting or fun. Another one is contribution. If people don't see how they're able to contribute pretty quickly, they're going to be like, oh my goodness, this is lame. I can't believe I'm here. So find ways to get them to contribute really quickly, but not like throwing them in off the deep end so that they feel like they're drinking from a fire hose. Like, you don't want that. There's a balance. So yeah, it's not just chucking them into a situation where they're going to fail. It's having an intentional, this is the goal. This is where I'd like you. And let's start biting bits off each day, each week, and having checks as we go. If that's all in a checklist, it makes it a lot easier, because every day your supervisor or whoever's managing those people can just make sure they accomplish what was needed through the day. So it doesn't have to be onerous, and you don't have to reinvent it every time. In fact, if you want it consistent, you should have this documented for any supervisor. And that's the other point, is people typically leave managers. They typically leave managers more than they leave companies. So don't ignore supervisors. Don't ignore those supervisory skills and helping them develop so that they can be a great manager, leader. That's super key. If they feel like their supervisor's not providing them with the support they need, then that's another good reason to leave. Yeah, so culture, certainly training, definitely contribution, and manager's capability.
Yeah, that's true.
The other thing that's important for retention that I should mention is, and this is also a great way to recruit top talent. If you have a documented journey, onboarding journey, or even some, like, I'm talking a slide deck, even just like one pager with like, oh, here's the steps that you can go through in our company. Here's the different progression you can make within our company. Even something simple like that can give people a vision of where they can go within this company. That can be very helpful. And you can, if you're clear on what does it take to get through these stages, it's encouraging. You can have regular annual reviews or quarterly. And if they're like, hey, I want to make more money, I want to be a supervisor, you can say, great, here's what it's going to take to get there. So that's very encouraging, because young people, they don't want to be a laborer forever. Want to know that there's a way to be able to buy a better car, buy a house, raise a family, and not break their back the whole way. It's just the generation we're dealing with. So show them the roadmap. So picture if you've got, somebody who's considering 2 different companies, they want to get hired somewhere, and then you present them in as part of their interviewing process, like, this is our career journey here, and here's how we help support you so that you can get from here to here. Who are they going to pick? If the other company has nothing like that, you're going to go with the one that looks like they're very intentional about their culture and intentional about helping you progress in your career.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
and small companies can do this too.
Yeah. You see this with like the skilled labor as well. Like, it's not just the office side of things where you see, you usually see them roadmap on that side, but
for sure,
these implemented on the field side as well. So I like that.
Yeah, like, tell me about some of the different, steps that you would have, or what would be a kind of a career journey. What are those stepping stones that somebody in your company would have when they get started, let's say as a laborer? Where are they going from there?
Yeah, so we have, all of our laborers, we call them installers, that come on, they will basically move into like an installer, like a lead installer is kind of like the next move, and then a foreman, and then a superintendent, and then the general superintendent. And, so it kind of moves up like that is usually like the roadmap. And I'm proud to say that like all of our carpenters are also direct employees to our company. So they get the 401k benefits. They get all the same benefits that I do, which I love. And I think that goes a long way because they feel like they're not just like
Mm-hmm.
temporary, it's just,
Yeah.
they're a employee of our company. Like they don't have
Well,
any.
and we shouldn't have classes or tiers of people like, oh, just because you sit at a computer, you're eligible for this, but you're not. Like, I think that's really brutal.
Yes.
And so you can actually map that on a one page and you can dive into it a little bit more clearly. Like, okay, here's what it takes to get to this level and the next level and the next level. And you can plan an assessment or a measurement so that the supervisor or manager, whoever, can observe and be like, yeah, they're actually checking all these boxes. And so now it's time to promote or time to move them up if they so choose. Yeah. So, there's a lot that can be done. It's super exciting because it's time, and I'm not trying to put down our industry, but it's time for the skilled trades to think more professionally in these ways around their employee experience, around HR, around training and career paths. It doesn't have to be arbitrary. It can be very intentional. Every other industry does it.
Yep.
So we should too.
I totally agree. Yeah. And that's something we always talk about is in changing I think it starts with changing the culture around our industry and how other people view our industry. Because I think the laborers and even like the temp laborers and stuff usually don't have those attributes and those types of goals because they don't think it's possible because of the way that
Right.
they're treated in the industry. And so I totally agree. I think if you kind of similar to what our company does, right? Like our company values our field to be very professional and to show up and to be, because they are the face of
Mm-hmm.
our company, because they're the ones in the field. They're the ones who are doing all the installation. They're the ones who are in the hospitals when there's people in there doing change order work or renovations. So, right. So they're the ones that are like the face of it. So putting that value and having that as a value, I feel like goes such a long way. And I'm starting to see more and more companies do that. But it's definitely like taking a very, very long time to get there that I've noticed.
Yeah.
And just the way that they're viewed a lot of the times, or I think I've talked to this in previous podcasts. I feel like we've always had like every movie you see, it's like the dirty construction worker or a construction worker catcalling, or just construction workers in general that I feel like needs to start to change because they're not like that at all. They're some of the best people I've ever been around and some of the best humans that I've ever, worked with. So I think starting to like make them feel that way, they'll start to present themselves that way.
Yeah, I think this is complex because certainly there's a cultural difference in a perception between somebody who wears a suit to work or who wears, like techie clothes versus work pants. And it has nothing to do with somebody's intelligence or class or emotional intelligence or any of that. And I hope things are starting to shift. I think people are starting to realize that tradespeople can be super well paid, and there should be more respect demanded of that. I love seeing some other people speaking so well of the trades, like Cody Sanchez from Contrarian Thinking. She's so amazing with cheering on the trades and elevating it to this like status in society as it should be. I'm sort of wondering how things will shift. And this is totally opinion and me just dreaming of 25 years in the future. But when people who work with their hands, their jobs aren't taken over by AI, like how cool is that going to be? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard to see. It's hard to say, but I do wonder if we're having a little bit of a shift in the direction of giving people kind of the respect that's due to them.
I agree.
I hope so. It's pretty badass to be able to build stuff. And I mean, I've been in a lot of environments. I grew up in the trades. My dad, he had a construction company, carpentry, actually, and he did heritage restoration. So I got to learn that trade. He had about 25 people in the crew. And I'm talking summer jobs between, college years and all of that. But I got to build in the shop, create wood components, learn how to manufacture heritage wood windows with proprietary methods and a lot of like paint stripping and even copper bending, like a lot of really interesting stuff for heritage homes and properties. And I mean, it's not awesome working in a Tyvek suit all summer. That can feel really awful, but it sure was really cool to be able to learn the skills. And then I had corporate experience. So I got into corporate banking and corporate training. I was building like coaching and leadership and sales training and all this stuff for like major banks. So that was pantyhose and pencil skirts and like pointy-toed shoes. That was like in that era when you actually dressed up to go to work. So it's interesting seeing the journey and the variety, but I love being back around now working for the trades and, second generation business owners where they've got this vision for how their company can be. And they're just like, we need help growing and scaling to that vision. And we know it's our people that make this work. So
Right.
those are the people that I just love working with, because they're sort of like my dad when he was in his late 30s, early 40s, trying to scale his business. And he's a master tradesman, but not necessarily an HR L&D guy. So,
Right.
he would have needed the support of somebody like me, like our team, to be able to get there. So it sort of feels like a circle back moment.
Yeah, that's really cool. Do you work with a lot of like bigger companies too, or are you mostly just supporting like the companies that are starting to kind of scale up? Do you work with like multi-million-dollar companies as well?
Yeah, so we have some that are bigger, so like a big transit companies and things like that. We've done work with some really large companies, like there's a huge demolition company and that we've worked with. Some of the ones that are a little smaller, like 50 plus employees that are growing. And also we do have some unions that have gotten our support. So some of those are big, like 15, 20,000 members. So they're in the big side. So yeah, we've got experience with quite a range. Typically, it makes sense if there's 35, 50 employees and growing. There has to be an intention for an investment into the employee experience, both for the field and office. That's really important, because otherwise it's not going to work, because there is a change and disruption. Like, we're setting foundations for future growth. And just so that it makes sense, like, we basically provide a fractional team with training designers, strategists, a leadership coach, HR specialist. So you get Lynn 1 through our team. And so we do the work of a fractional team so that you don't need to hire all those different people. You might get 25% of each person to make one whole, if that.
Yeah. The reason I ask is I feel like a lot of like the turnover typically happens with bigger companies. And it's almost like as soon as they shift to more of like a corporate entity,
The corporate
that's when you
model.
start,
Yeah.
yeah,
Like
that's
the
when you start to
100,
see,
150,
yep,
200. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, that's when you start to see that turnover, and almost like you're the whole, oh, I'm just a number kind of a thing starts to feel that way.
Systems, sorry, that's when the systems have to be really rock solid, because if the systems aren't in place, yeah, you're going to have people kind of churning.
Yeah. So what kind of advice would you give those companies?
Size company for us to work with. So at that point, you probably are starting to have some HR staff.
Mm-hmm.
So you're starting to fill out your department a little bit. So at that point, you might just need more professional strategy and then a couple of helping hands to get you moving in the right direction. But also, it's a lot of work to build out the content and to set up your technology. So yeah, usually you need somebody to help get it started, and then the run of it gets passed back to you. So there's a lot of I like to think of like start energy and run energy in a business, right? When you're ready to grow that next layer, train new people, hire new people, that requires a lot of start energy. And sometimes you need to just get somebody who knows what they're doing to get things kick-started. And then the ongoing run and maintenance can get passed back to an HR coordinator or an instructional designer that's in-house. And then they can kind of help with the ongoing run. So yeah, I would just say it's not a bad idea to reach out. I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody who's interested to see if we can help, but definitely the size of the organization doesn't matter.
Okay. Yeah, just the need.
Yeah. Usually it's just before they have their own internal L&D department. At a certain point, they might have already switched to full-time hires there, and then there's no point in hiring us. But before you're ready for that, there's a little bridge that needs to be gapped or spanned. A bridge. I don't know. There's a gap that needs to be bridged. There you go.
Yeah, that makes sense. This has been a great conversation. Just what you guys do is so unique, and it's just not something that you typically see a lot. And it's a very big need, especially in the skilled labor world. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience, or anything else you'd like to give advice?
Yeah, well, I would just say, reach out if you want to have a conversation. If you have any questions, check out our website. Please do download the onboarding blueprint and just think about it. You get to create the culture that you want in your organization. And if you want it to be a learning culture and you want it to be collaborative and you want to be able to really move forward and grow with great people, and you know that your people are the value, you've got to invest in this. And then circling back to how do you motivate people? You've got to incentivize the behaviors that you want to see. So don't be cheap, buy some gift cards, use them to encourage behavior that you're seeing, give clear direction. This is a model that actually often when I have a people problem that I'm trying to solve, I'll leave you with this model or this framework, and we can come back on and do an episode all about it. But it's DCOM. So the D stands for direction. The C stands for competence, the O is obstacle, and the M is motivation. So I'm going to give you a little example here. If you have a person and maybe they're a little bit, I don't know, they're not doing what you want them to do, whatever that is, and you're getting frustrated and you think, maybe they're no good and I need to fire them. First of all, think D, have I given them clear direction? Do they know what's expected? Because sometimes we just are annoyed that people can't read our minds. No, that's not helpful. So D is direction. Have I given them clear direction? O is obstacles. Have I removed any obstacles or barriers? Do they have the tools they need? Do they have what's needed? Have I helped remove some of the impediments? And that might just be asking the conversation, hey, what's getting in your way here? And they tell you and you go, cool, I can fix that. All right, you need your own tool belt and thingy. Okay, cool, here it is. Let's make sure that you don't have any excuses or obstacles. Sorry, I skipped C. C is competency. Do they have the skill? Have they been given the training? You can't expect them to do something if you haven't trained them on it, or at least on the way you want it done. And then the last one is M, motivation. Are you incentivizing? Are they motivated to do the thing? If they're like, this is dumb, I don't see why, maybe you need to tell them why it matters, or maybe you need to incentivize the behavior. You have to think as a leader and take ownership and accountability for people's behavior. You can't just hire and plunk them in a role and hope for the best. You have accountability as a leader. That's why typically you don't have one person managing more than 7. You need to be able to, provide this leadership. It's not babysitting, it's leadership. So let's reframe that. So I'll leave you with that. There's lots of golden nuggets here that we could drop.
I love that. Actually, it's funny you're talking about that, and I'm literally thinking of my own personal, have I been doing that for for the people that I work with? Yeah, I guess I need to
if you're having a people challenge, check yourself first and kind of have a minute with your coffee and analyze DCOM. That's used, by the way, with very senior banking executives. I taught that years ago. Oh yeah, it's used by everybody.
I feel like you can even use it as a parent.
You
with
can.
Your kid.
Yep. Yep. As a parent, as a spouse.
Yep.
All the things. It's influencing.
Great. Well, thank you, Manja. I'm so excited that you came on. And I know we've been trying to set this up for probably months. And so we're just really excited that you were able to join us. And I know it's probably late there on the East Coast. So we really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.